I spent 60 days testing Bryan Johnson's Blueprint supplement stack while tracking certain biomarkers. I found next to nothing changed for me, and I found absolutely no different either. And I'm going to share with you why, as it might be different for you. I'll also share with you how you can create the mix for yourself for much less money too. And this video is split into sections with timestamps below in the description, so you can jump to analysis of the product, cheaper methods, or results, whatever you want. Every Blueprint review on YouTube falls into one or two camps. You have influencers promoting it, Bryan Johnson himself, affiliate creators, people who tried it for 30 days and loved it. And then you have the skeptics who call it overpriced or a scam. I don't think either camp answers one question that actually matters to people. Is the convenience worth 3 to 5 times the cost of the individual ingredients? And what evidence-based alternatives exist for the person who wants the science without the premium? I certainly think there's better ways to achieve the intended outcomes, and I'll share them with you here. I am Dr. Abs. I've been in longevity and aesthetic medicine for over a decade. After retiring from clinical dentistry a long time ago, I decided to go and become qualified in multiple other fields as a postgraduate in areas such as sports nutrition, anti-aging medicine, and metabolic medicine, amongst others. I'm also a part of the Society for Cosmetic Scientists, so I know product formulation pretty well, you could say, and I have no affiliation with Blueprint whatsoever. What I am going to do in this video is walk you through every single component of the Blueprint stack, show you what the published research actually supports, compare the cost to individually sourced alternatives if you really want them, show you my personal biomarker data from 60 days of testing, and then give you a framework to build your own personalized protocol for 40 to 60% less. And if you are in the UK or Europe, the savings are even larger because of shipping and import costs. Now, before I show you the results, you need to understand the setup, because without knowing the methodology, the numbers mean nothing. And this is where some Blueprint reviewers don't say too much. They show you a before and after without controlling for anything else in their life. Here's what I tracked and why each marker matters. Total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, these are your standard lipids. Most Blueprint reviewers focus here because cholesterol is easy to estimate and easy to understand, but it's only part of the picture. C-reactive protein, CRP, this is the inflammation marker that most people forget to test, and it tells you about systemic inflammation, and it's one of the strongest correlates of cardiovascular events independent of cholesterol. If you are taking supplements for longevity and want to track a biomarker, CRP will be an interesting one to look at if you really insist on tracking something. What else? Epigenetic age. Frankly, I think these are a load of crap. I've had patients take 2 tests on the same day from the same company and get 2 different results. At the end of the day, they're also just a label. They speak nothing of symptomology, which is the most important thing. However, I know you guys will find it interesting, so I've included it for you here. Now, let me walk you through what I actually took. The Blueprint stack includes several products: the longevity mix, the essential soft gel, the essential capsules, the blueberry nut mix, the nutty pudding, and the snake oil, right, which is the extra virgin olive oil. The daily cost comes to roughly $11.50 per day, or about $350 a month. That's before shipping. If you're outside the US, add another, say, $40 to $60 like me. And to prevent any bias here, by the way, I got a friend of mine to order them, and I then paid them back. So nothing here was obtained with any discount at all. I paid full price for everything. Now, and this is crucial, I also need to be honest about confounding variables. During that 60-day period, I was also following my low to zero carb diet with low to zero anti-nutrients, which I've been on for 2 years now and never felt better. I work out and play sport multiple times a week. I was sleeping to the point where I never felt sleepy during the day, and I never woke up tired. I get plenty of sunshine where possible. I have great friends I spend time with, and I have no medical problems. These aren't small variables. In my clinical estimation, lifestyle factors probably account for 50 to 70% of the results you're about to see, maybe more. Supplements are simply a tool that you might need to use sometimes. That's all. If you're sleeping 3 hours, eating processed garbage, and not moving, no supplement stack fixes that. This is what one of the review video called, I think it was the elephant in the room, and they were right. Now, let's go through every component of the Blueprint stack systematically. For each one, I'm going to cover what it is, what the research actually shows, the cost compared to buying it yourself, and where relevant, a cosmetic medicine angle if possible. Now, in order to do this, I enlisted the help of one of the top nutritionists in the world, Richard Smith. Richard and I put both of our minds together for this analysis so that you guys can get a bit more detail if possible. But before we begin, there's one safety caveat I need to warn you about. If your doctor has prescribed a statin, a torvastatin, rosuvastatin, simvastatin, any of them, you must not combine that with a red yeast rice without explicit medical approval. You're essentially double dosing on statin therapy if you take it. The risk of rhabdomyolysis, muscle breakdown that can damage your kidneys, it's small, but it's real. The risk of liver enzyme elevation increases. And if you're on blood thinners, garlic has mild anticoagulant properties that compound too. But anyway, let's see what Richard and I had to say about the ingredients. So here we are, Rich and myself. As I said, we are going to look into these things. And we're not going to go through and give you a massive essay on every single ingredient, because if you're about to go swimming in a swimming pool and there's all sorts of features about the swimming pool, but there's a giant dog turd in the middle, you don't need to know about all the other features, because the important thing is the dog turd. You just know that, and you know you're not going to get in, even if everything else is great. Apologies for the analogy, and I can see Rich is holding a laugh back. But we're going to see these swimming pools and just look at a few dog turds to the point where we don't need to see the rest of it. So, Rich, thank you very much for joining me. Busy guy.
Anytime.
I know you've got a live coming up soon. Let's get straight into it. So we're going to look at this thing called the Longevity Mix. This is kind of like the hero product. As you can see, this is the packaging. It gives you supposedly all these different things. Let's get straight into it and just have a look at the ingredients and then go from there. So we can have a look at the dosing. We can have a look at the main ingredients here. I don't know which you would like to start with, this bit or the dosing up in the nutrition facts panel.
Yeah, let's take a look at the nutrition. Let's see what sort of values we're working with.
No problem. Here we go. So quite a few things in there. Other ingredients are here as well. And I guess we can kind of show everything in one go here. Vitamin C, it's yes, it is an antioxidant, but what is the absolute requirement in food? I'm sure we will both agree is zero. And yeah, let's carry on from there. Anything that stands out for you at all? Anything good? Anything that makes you think I really want this?
Not an awful lot, I'll be honest. I mean, look, let's get back to the vitamin C. As you rightly say, if we're living a low-carb ketogenic lifestyle, our requirement for vitamin C becomes a lot less anyway. But the interesting thing with vitamin C is if we overconsume it, it can overexpress the glyoxylate pathway and turn into oxalate. So the overconsumption or supplementation of vitamin C needs to be monitored very carefully. It's not a case of more is better, and 250 milligrams is a bit excessive for me. That's far too high for me to consume in a day.
Yeah, and there's some people watching this and saying, well, I'm not keto, I'm not low carb, so that doesn't apply to me. In that case, surely you'll be fine for me. What would you say to that? I mean, what I would say is, well, if vitamin C would be helpful for you, then the answer is not to buy a bunch of vitamin C. It's to ask yourself why it's needed for you outside of your body into your body in the first place, rather than commercializing your deficiency in the first place. What would you say to that?
Yeah, 100%. It's let's not plaster the hole in the wall. Let's fix the root cause. Maybe knock the plaster off and rebuild. As you say, it's very beneficial in small doses, but I think that overexpression of that glyoxylate pathway and that effect or potential of oxalate creation, which is in anybody, whether you're ketogenic or not, is going to be an issue, and that is a lot. I mean, there are you mentioned being an antioxidant. There are far better ways to increase antioxidant pathways in the body, which we can get into as we go through these. But that's too much vitamin C in my opinion.
I agree. And then if we jump to calcium there as well, Calcium's a very sensitive ingredient. You know, it can interfere with the absorption of other things, you know, or other things can interfere with the absorption of calcium. Would you agree?
100%. And it's, you know, calcium is something that I do not supplement with.
Yeah.
And it's something that I monitor very carefully in my diet. Calcium is one of 6 compounds that is essential. It's found in every cell in the body. It's essential for life.
Yeah.
But what we don't want is too much calcium. Too much calcium will compete with magnesium. So magnesium will drop. This will affect the reabsorption of the potassium, because that's partly what magnesium does. So now we're in a state with elevated calcium, too low magnesium, elevated sodium, and suppressed potassium. So critically damaging to the body. And it's, in fact, studies show that supplementation or overall consumption of around 500 milligrams a day can increase risk of cardiovascular disease by as much as 15%. And we're already at 400 with this. This isn't a product for me.
Yeah, and I think it's 400 milligrams if you get the scoop perfect every time. There are going to be people out there who think more is better and put more than that. And so it is going to be a problem for people. Magnesium we've touched on as well. I mean, personally, for me, things like those minerals, if you're salting your food properly and you're eating properly, it's not needed. Like you get what you need.
Yeah, I agree. Look, citrate is a fantastic form of magnesium. It's very bioavailable. But if your requirement is for magnesium, then there are far cheaper ways to supplement if you need to supplement rather than putting it in. So, I mean, the magnesium put in this, for me, is nothing more than adding some ribbons and some flashing lights. Just, it's another compound. But what people don't realize is that more is not better. The more compounds that you add to a supplement, the more likely they are to compete. And again, you've got the calcium in there and the magnesium. The calcium is enough to offset that magnesium. So it's essentially not doing an awful lot in there. So I see no reason to put the calcium in or the magnesium in this situation.
Yeah, I'm gonna give some credit here. The form chosen, which is citrate, is not a bad form considering the overall product. If you have something like magnesium threonate, magnesium malate, etc., magnesium taurate, they have different situations where they might perform better. And I think for something like this, at the very least, they've chosen a half decent form, which I don't think you can criticize. If you're going to put magnesium in, that's probably the version I would have chosen.
100%. So citrate has a high affinity to bind or increase the ability of oxalate to bind to calcium. So that's going to potentially lower the or offset the potential toxicity of the oxalate buildup. But then all you're doing again is you've put these 3 compounds in and they're all just cancelling each other out. But it is a very, very good form of magnesium. So credit where it's due. You know, it is one of the more bioavailable forms.
Just so people are, know very, very quickly when you're watching, when you look at these minerals like calcium, sodium, potassium, magnesium, like Rich said, it's not about more is better. They exist in the body in a specific ratio. For example, you have calcium, magnesium, ATPase. You have sodium, potassium transporters depending on ATP. There are specific ratios they have to be used in these, and that's why overall in the body they exist in a particular ratio. So saying that you have too much of this particular mineral, whatever it may be, is it too much in an absolute context, or is it too much relative to the amount of everything else that you have? And this is why you have to consider everything relative to each other instead of just shoving as much in as one thing as possible. But we'll move on to the bit that's sort of in the second section. Hopefully you can see my mouse. Yes, you can. Here, there's obviously quite a lot in there. We'll group them together. So if we look at these amino acids like taurine, glycine, lysine, theanine, etc. I mean, I'm sure I speak on behalf of both of us when we say if you eat properly with a full amino acid profile and no anti-nutrients alongside, and no chance of hyperinsulinemia, things like that, you're going to get the amino acids you need anyway. Would you agree?
100%. But look, there are a few things to look at with this. I mean, it's let's look at the creatine, for example. There's 2,500 milligrams to 2.5 grams. We can obtain 5 from a kilo of beef. So, the requirement to supplement with this is negated, as you say, if we eat real food. But I think, Bryan is predominantly vegan. So, I mean, his requirement for creatine is going to be higher because he doesn't consume a real diet. He consumes a very poor diet, hence the reason that he needs to supplement, dramatically. But look, if you eat a kilo of meat, you're going to obtain twice that value comfortably, and it's going to be in a far more bioavailable form. As you say, with the taurine, so the taurine will increase bile production and bile reabsorption. So that helps emulsify the fats and the proteins. But again, if you eat a meat diet, you're acidic. Your gut is going to be very acidic, which it should be, by the way. But consuming plant compounds, it makes your stomach acid less acidic. So the requirement then to supplement with taurine is going to be higher. And it's the same with the glycine. But if you have an acidic gut, then the gut is going to break these down, and it's going to use these in a far more efficient way. So I can see why Bryan would need to supplement, because he doesn't consume, a real diet. What else was there? The lysine. I mean, the lysine that blocks or competes with arginine directly. So if you suffer with cold sores, lysine's fantastic. But if you don't, well, that's going to reduce arginine because it directly competes. Well, arginine is a potent vasodilator directly correlated with longevity. It increases nitric oxide. So why you would want to do that in this case, is beyond me. And then, the calcium alpha-ketoglutarate, the AKG is used in the Krebs cycle, and that's critically important. But living a low-carb ketogenic lifestyle increases the availability and the flux through AKG in the citric acid cycle anyway. Living that lifestyle will increase mitochondrial activity, greater glutamate to AKG conversion, and so on. We can keep on listing. Living a clean lifestyle allows us to do this. Plus, the meat themselves contains the precursors, the glutamine and the glutamate. The meat contains these precursors that allow us to make the AKG anyway. So it just makes our requirement to supplement with these completely redundant. I don't see any benefit to supplement. And just to circle back with the L-theanine that you mentioned, while it's on my mind, so that's a potent supplement for calming the body and the brain, which can confer benefits. If you're in a stressed state, if you're overly stressed, it balances something called the glutamate GABA ratio. But one thing that we can do from a diet perspective is if we live a clean lifestyle with less carbohydrate, we balance this anyway, because that's what a low carb ketogenic lifestyle will typically do, is balance the glutamate and GABA ratio. But the theanine is going to cause major fatigue if you're consuming that throughout the day, and you're looking for energy. Then it's going to overexpress that pathway and make you feel tired. So I mean, that's not where I want to be. If you're struggling to sleep, then that's a separate issue, which we can discuss away from this. But
that's something we treat instead of trying to cover up the problem of not sleeping with supplements.
100%.
And if we look at the glutathione, I mean, as a matter of fact, not an opinion, if you weren't able to produce the exact amount of glutathione needed, you would be dead. We produce it ourselves. It is the body's endogenously produced antioxidant. If we weren't able to produce the amount we needed, we would be dead. So supplementing it, personally, I don't think is needed. These ingredients in the context of a particular nutraceutical, you could make an example for, you can make a reasonable argument for, assuming there's good data for it. But as a supplement, a supplement means you're not getting something in your diet, so you take it. You can have all these things for free if you just eat right. So I don't think we need to go into
100%.
massive amounts of detail, but I'm sure we both agree on that.
100%, and in far higher quantities and more bioavailable quantities. It seems like, or feels like, Bryan needs to supplement with these because his diet is insufficient. And it's what else is it? The glycine, fantastic for making ligaments. Ligaments, tendons, and so on. It also balances. 100%. It balances the glutamate to GABA ratio again. The glycine to methionine ratio. But then to supplement with glycine and not consume enough methionine from animal proteins, for example, that's going to overexpress the glycine to methionine ratio in the other direction. And glycine's favorable. It's incredibly beneficial. But again, if we consume real food, a piece of meat, for example, then these are going to be found in abundance. So I see no benefit to consuming this compound whatsoever.
Same. And we don't need to, this is quite long, again, we don't need to go through everything, but we can talk about the principles and the concepts here. This is the products we can go through: essential capsules, a lot of vitamins here and minerals. For all the minerals, I think we can group them together and say, number one, if you eat right, you don't need them. And second of all, they're needed in terms of, number one, a bioavailable form and a bioavailable ratio between everything. And I don't think you can replicate that perfectly in a supplement. I know you agree, in fact, that the food is much, much better. So we could kind of class all that as the same thing in that first section there, I guess. Is there anything you want to specifically mention in that top half at all?
Look, credit where it's due. The B12 he's used methylcobalamin, which is the active form. So at least he hasn't used cyanocobalamin.
Yep.
So that is a good form. But again, all of these compounds we can consume in high quantities from animal proteins.
Right,
but the folate, I mean, what is that? Methyl tetrahydrofolate. So if we look at the methionine cycle, if we supplement with the end compound, we miss all the other steps. So in simple terms, and I won't take too much time talking about this, but we consume folate in the diet. There's two different types, essentially. There's lots of different types, but we get animal folate or plant folate. One's a polyglutamate form, one's a monoglutamate form. So animal protein gives us a monoglutamate form, which is the one that we need. This will go through a series of steps: dihydrofolate, tetrahydrofolate, and then methylene tetrahydrofolate. So what we're doing is the methylene tetrahydrofolate, which is the MTHFR, that makes the end compound. But if we supplement with the end compound, we've missed all of these important steps. These steps, the tetrahydrofolate allows us to make DNA. So that's not a step that we want to be increasing, missing. If we want to increase folate, we can consume folate in B9 from animal proteins, which is very different to folate from plant compounds, by the way. But we can increase that conversion of the MTHFR to the active form of the folate by using B2. So if we consume enough B2 in the diet, we increase what we know as slow methylation. So I'm always weary of a supplement that skips out all of those intermediate steps.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of these bits here, I mean, nicotinamide riboside, that's another way of trying to get NAD production. However, to convert nicotinamide riboside into NAD, you're going to need other things, and those other things are going to be taken from the body elsewhere to be making NAD here, which means you've now deprived the other place of those other resources, so you can make NAD here. So the net benefit is not what you think at all, because you may have made NAD here, but you've lost things elsewhere. And all these other things, there's nothing wrong with boron or lithium as minerals. Obviously, we need them. But again, if you eat right, you don't need them. Spermidine, we could go on, for a long, long time. I think there's something not quite right about artificially inducing autophagy. It comes with its own risks. Not doing it in the right way. If you eat normally and then you try and put spermidine in without the inhibition of mTOR complex 1, i.e. fasting, you're completely rerouting human physiology. And that's not going to be without risk. These other things, these bacterial things. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think if you eat right, your stomach bacteria will be whatever it needs to be anyway.
100%. And you've hit the nail on the head. Look, if you eat a real diet, an ancestral appropriate lifestyle, we obtain all of these and there's no need to supplement. So I think Bryan may be in a situation where he needs to supplement.
Yeah.
But all of the, I mean, some of these are downright damaging. You've got, as you said, the broccoli seed there. So the glucoraphanin causes major issues in the body. Isothiocyanates such as sulforaphane, they block the absorption of iodine, for example. So it's these compounds cause major issues in the body in regards to thyroid function. They directly compete with the absorption of iodine at the thyroid. Nobody should be consuming these compounds. These compounds are used in chemotherapy treatment, or sulforaphane in particular, which is a broccoli extract. But would you take a chemotherapy pill if you didn't have cancer?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that kind of sums it up. There's nothing in here. First of all, there's the things that are, in general, good ideas, like minerals. We obviously need those. Vitamins, we need those. If you eat right, you don't need them. If you need a supplement, it means there's something wrong with your diet. So it's cheaper to fix your diet than to commercialize your problem. And then the other things, which are beyond the supplement, like these, I mean, let's not get into clastogenics 101 here, but we can easily say that they're not the shining saints that they claim to be. I mean, if you eat a broccoli, then like I said, it's clastogenic. It damages DNA material.
Literally breaks your DNA.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
never a good thing, the ubiquinol there, it's if you eat a true lifestyle, then we can create cholesterol naturally through the mevalonate pathway, and we create coenzyme Q10 as part of this. So it's, again,
Yeah.
eating animal proteins, natural fats, a real lifestyle, consuming real food essentially will negate the requirement for any of these supplements.
Completely agree. And this is the final one. It's only going to take, I don't think there's a lot to say. Blueberries, there's no carbohydrates, are not essential. We know that. Macadamia nuts, if I'm not mistaken, there's nothing in there that's essential that we can't get in other ways. And same for walnuts. I might be wrong on this, but do these two last ingredients not have unsaturated fatty acids as well, which aren't good for human physiology?
Yeah. And it's, the blueberries are going to contain anthocyanin, which we're told is beneficial. Again, this is a known carcinogen, and it's, anthocyanin causes major problems in the body when overconsumed. Blueberries, it consumed in moderation and not overly concerning. And in fairness, he's used macadamia, which are as close to lectin-free as you're going to get. So, they are one of the better nuts that you can consume. And the walnuts are probably lower on the toxicity scale, but I don't understand what the benefit conferred is from consuming this. There is literally, you're consuming a lot of carbohydrates, which is essentially sugar. How many carbohydrates are in there, Abs?
Total is 8 grams.
8 grams. So that's what, per serving?
That is 1 scoop. Yeah, and I think it's 1 scoop.
That's 2 teaspoons of sugar, and the human body at any one time only needs 1.
Yeah.
So we're doubling the requirement there for the body's glucose requirement. I don't understand why you would be taking this, other than to cause oxidative stress, because is it an antioxidant? Is it sold as an antioxidant compound?
Honestly, I've no idea. I can't work it out. It says you're taking it for balanced energy. That I have no idea what that actually means. Heart health. Your heart is healthy enough if you just eat right. Antioxidant support. You make glutathione yourself, and if it wasn't enough, you'd be dead. We'll say that again. So you don't need support because you're still alive. I don't know what else we can say.
It's also important. He mentions antioxidant there. So these compounds will activate, our old friend, the NRF2 pathway. Overexpression leads to NF-κB, which is an inflammatory pathway. And this is, basic biology. You can take a look at this. Overexpression of NRF2, basically the activation of NRF2 is an oxidative stress pathway. It increases glutathione because the body has just sensed a toxin, which is the same pathway, by the way, we can elicit through tobacco smoke, exhaust fumes, mercury, lead, arsenic, so on and so forth. So these are compounds this is probably one of the least damaging supplements that he's got there, but there's certainly no benefit to consuming this. If you want something that's sweet and crunchy and is going to give you, a pleasant, I don't know what it tastes like, but looking at the description, I'm sure it's sweet and crunchy, fantastic, but there's not going to be any nutritional benefit conferred from consuming that compound.
Completely agree. Would you recommend this set of products to anyone?
I would not recommend it to anybody.
I know what the answer will be, but I'm going to ask you. We've said, if you eat correct, if you're keto, low carb, if you're not having anti-nutrients, you wouldn't need it. What about people who aren't those things? What about people on a standard Western diet?
So again, I don't believe this is going to confer benefits. I believe that Bryan may be because he's vegan, but that just highlights the requirement for exogenous compounds and lack of bioavailability in nutrient-dense foods from his current diet. I think if you're sick and you supplement, it may confer benefits. But if you need any specific supplement within those lists, supplement singly, and you're going to avoid any of these compounds not being absorbed through competition. There are far cheaper ways to improve your health. It's far bigger levers to pull.
Absolutely. If you need a supplement, you need to fix the reason why rather than actually spending money on supplements. And I think that kind of sums everything up. Rich, thank you very much for your time. Hope we have not been too boring for those of you who want us to go through every single ingredient to infinite levels of detail. I'll leave the links to Rich's channel and to Instagram things in the link below. He's a wealth of knowledge, and thank you very much for joining me, Rich.
Anytime. Pleasure as always, man.
And a big thank you to Richard for doing that with me. I'll leave a link to his fantastic channel in the description below. And also, let me give you the honest summary across all components. The average cost premium across the entire Blueprint stack is 4 to 5 times what you would pay versus sourcing the same ingredients individually if you really wanted to. That means you are paying $350 a month for roughly $70 to $90 worth of ingredients. The remaining $260 is the convenience premium. Someone's done the ratios, the packaging, the daily routine all for you. Now, is that inherently wrong? No, not at all. Convenience has genuine value, but you deserve to know exactly what you're paying for as well. And other reviewers sometimes skip this calculation or obscure it. Now, for the 60-day results, though, let's get straight into that. All of these results were on the basis that my diet and lifestyle are explained earlier in the video, and I made no significant change to them when starting the product. So let's start with total cholesterol. It went from 11.2 millimoles a liter to 11.3. So basically, stayed exactly the same. HDL, this went from 2 to 2.15. Again, basically stayed the same with no significant change. LDL, that went from 9.2 to 9.15. So basically the same. Now, why do I not care about these being low, as I was taught at university as being the healthiest? Well, this is a long video all by itself, and I'll link a video in the description below that talks about it. But essentially, there's no causal evidence that cholesterol is bad for us. Cholesterol is made in the liver, and it's supposedly bad for the heart. Why would we have evolved over millions of years by one organ trying to kill another? Can you think of a single animal where its current state of evolution is one organ is destroying another somehow? Look at the graph on screen now. I believe it's the largest data set on cholesterol and mortality ever collected. What do you see? The more cholesterol there is, the lower the mortality rate. Now, there's so much more to say about this, which I've missed, of course, but I need to move on to the next measurements. This isn't a cholesterol video. That's linked in the description. Next up was CRP. So this was 0.2 milligrams per liter at the beginning, and it stayed the same at 0.2 afterwards. Now for epigenetic age, again, I think these are a load of rubbish. However, I decided to use a Whoop fitness band here. This is because many professional athletes show their Whoop age online. So I thought it'd be interesting for you all to compare with. As you can see from the screenshots now, I was 20.9 at the start of the experiment and then 21.6 after 60 days. At the time of recording this, I'm currently 33. So if anything, it aged me slightly, but again, the results so insignificant, and it could also be due to other things that weren't controlled. So here's another elephant in the room. Supplements and nutraceuticals are just tools. And if you're not doing the right diet and lifestyle before them, then there's no point wasting money. If you've got the 90% right, then there may be a place for them depending on your individual circumstances. But if you haven't, then do all the things you can for free, before spending any money, is my advice. For example, I take a nutraceutical drink called Nutricos. It's literally the only drinkable in the world that gets your body to internally make multiple types of collagen, elastin, and fibronectin all at the same time. Nothing else comes anywhere near. However, I take that whilst ensuring that I don't have a ridiculously unhealthy lifestyle so that it has a chance to work. If you want to see the drink, by the way, I'll leave a link in the description for you. But now, the cost-benefit calculation. 60 days of Blueprint costs roughly $700, and it got me no improvement as far as I felt in my day-to-day life. You can run the same calculation with some individually sourced alternatives at roughly 40 to 60% less cost, and determine whether the convenience premium is worth it for your budget, if you really want to get it. So what if you want to make it yourself for much cheaper? Well, all the ingredients can actually be bought on Amazon in most countries pretty easily. I did a very quick and rough calculation. The vast majority of the components will be around $100 to $150. Compare that to Blueprint's $350 a month. It's a very big saving. However, the key is quality. Not all ingredients are equivalent. To be fair to Bryan, I suspect that if you bought all of these things separately yourself, they wouldn't be as high in quality and purity with third-party testing as if you bought them from him. Credit where it's due, genuinely. When I was in my sports nutrition training, in fact, supplement quality was a very big part of education. And one of the best things you can do is to pay more for better quality. It makes a really big difference. So with Bryan's product, you're not just paying for the convenience of having everything together without needing to source them separately. You're also paying for what I suspect is very good quality starting ingredients. Now, if you're in the UK, like me, or Europe, things change slightly. Blueprint becomes even less cost effective here because of the shipping. Then you've also got import duties and VAT too, which might be another 15 to 20% depending on where you are. So then it might be something like $450 or $500 a month. However, the good news is that European supplement quality is often higher due to stricter EU regulations. UK and EU sourcing through suppliers like iHerb, who have European warehousing, or MyProtein for the basic stuff, or there are German supplement retailers. They bring your monthly cost to around €100. That's less than half what Blueprint costs delivered to your door. Now, in fact, we had a member in my online school group recently who was looking at certain nutraceuticals, and we did exactly these calculations to work out whether they could do it for much cheaper by making it themselves. They did it, and actually, as a nice side note, we also managed to get them a particular laser skin treatment for their face for around $1,500 less. For around $1,500 less by doing loads of skin prep work at home for around $100. If you're interested in joining, link is in the description below, and we do loads of live teaching every week too. That was my stomach rumbling. I'd edit that bit out. But back to this. So I need to credit Bryan for something else here too. He actually shows you the exact list of what's in there, so you can get it yourself if you wish. You can only give him credit for that, and I take my hat off to him for doing so. But let me give you my overall take on all of it though. Is Blueprint a scam? No. Bryan's genuinely trying to optimize human longevity. The ingredients aren't ones I agree with, but for people that do agree with them, the doses are reasonable. The convenience is great, and I think it's worth the premium over buying everything yourself and mixing it yourself at home with ingredients that probably aren't as high in quality as well. Is it really worth the money overall though? For me, no. I don't think there's any evidence that the liver has been trying to kill the heart over millions of years, so anything that's designed to lower cholesterol doesn't have any common sense behind it. Let me give you my take on both, general principles of longevity and on Bryan Johnson himself. Longevity doesn't come from magic pills or supplements. It comes from basics like diet and lifestyle, which are almost always entirely free or very close to free. If you're not getting those things right, then whatever else you do for that goal is just futile in my view. And secondly, I want to talk about Bryan. Even though I think the product is utter garbage, I think the world of Bryan. And I've said this in videos multiple times over the years. He's genuinely trying to improve everyone's health, including his own. And you can't knock him for that. Is teaching the world that no one's going to care more about your health than you are, and that you have to take responsibility for it. I may not agree with a lot of what he does, but he's not doing them because he's an expert. He's doing them because of the advice given to him by his team, which is gravely misinformed on so many things. For example, I know one member of his team that's been advising him on cosmetic treatments has had certain treatments themselves. And when I saw the list of what they've had, I realized they have no clue what they're doing. I absolutely think Bryan deserves a round of applause for his noble goals and willpower. But I also wish that I was there on his team to offer a counter opinion on things and prove that a lot of what they do has no evidence behind it. He's got a good heart, but I think I would show up his advisors to know next to nothing in their fields of expertise or lack thereof. In fact, many of us would. I mean, just look at my own stats in this video. If you want me to make a video of how I got my own whoop age so low and how I have a resting heart rate of just over 30, let me know in the comments below and I'll make a video on that too.